But here we have this war, which has cost us hundreds of billions of dollars. Hundreds of thousands of people have been killed. And the whole thing was based upon a lie.
Yeah.
And that's the second Iraq War. But remember the first Iraq War, where there was this woman from Kuwait testifying in front of the Senate, and she said that the Iraqis were taking babies out of incubators and throwing them on the floor. And that was a lie, too.
That was,
and
yes.
If she hadn't done that, the vote was closed in the Senate, we never would have gone to war in the first place, would we? Because the Senate would have voted against the war.
Well, it's possible. I mean, one of the things I want to do with this book is say basically enough is enough already. You know, you're gonna take our troops into harm's way, then you better square with us. You know, this would all be different if there had actually been a sincere threat by Saddam Hussein, then Bush would not be in the trouble that he is, and I wouldn't be sitting here. I wouldn't have written the book. But the fact of the matter is it was all based on a lie. Bush had fabricated the case before Congress because he said, he even ignored what his own national intelligence estimate that had been put out on October 1st, 2002, where all the different intelligence organizations come up with an estimate of how big a threat was Saddam, and they concluded he wasn't such a big threat. And what Bush did is he completely deleted that section when he put a summary out before Congress. He lied to the American people. He said Saddam was a threat, and that was it. And so there was such premeditation in this particular case that it could be very easily to convict him in a court of law. And you see, he would have no defense. If you're in a murder trial, right, what is one of the most common defenses that you can muster? It's self-defense, right? But there was no self-defense because Saddam Hussein wasn't a threat. So, you know, some people said, oh, yeah, but we've gone to war before on false pretext. That's true. We have gone to war. The question is, though, first of all, how willing was the president? And knowledgeable. There's some questions, for instance, about LBJ and the Gulf of Tonkin incident that led to a massive escalation in Vietnam. And it would appear that he was not really gung-ho for that war, but he got ensnared in it. But Bush has been for this for a long time, and so the degree of premeditation has been absolutely well established. And what we say to people, well, it happened before. Well, okay, so it should have been. If you can document all the elements of the crime that need to be shown, then by all means, you know. But what we're saying is this is a turning point. This is a turning point in our consciousness, and at the very same time, international law has evolved to the point where, for instance, Pinochet, who was the dictator and the murderer of Chile, was actually indicted for war crimes. And the only thing that stopped him from being put on trial by the Spanish was that he died. But he was arrested in his hospital bed. And this was like a major breakthrough that indicates that the international community is now comfortable with the thought that if you are in office and you commit heinous crimes, genocide, killings, war crimes, and Bugliosi and I would argue sending troops to war on false pretenses, you're going to pay for it. And so we have now a movement that's in formation. It's called the Accountability Movement. There are a lot of people that probably don't even know the movement is out there, but would say, sign me up, because I feel the same way you do. We have to have our leaders abide by the rule of law. And so, you know, my own brother is a philosopher. He wrote a book called Freedom Evolves. And I went back to that book after doing this study and thinking, I think it's right. And one of the things he says in that book is that there is this fundamental need to hold each other accountable for our acts, and it has evolved over time. And so I think that eventually we will prevail. You know, we're still going to try to get Bush in a courtroom. There's no statute of limitations. If you've committed a war crime or if you've committed murder, that will hang over you for the rest of your life. Same for Cheney.
In some of my other shows, I've pointed out that it's a long American tradition of going to war on false pretenses. As you mentioned, the Vietnam, the Gulf of Tonkin, they said that our boats had been attacked. They weren't attacked. And then you go back, the Second World War. Did Roosevelt know that the attack on Pearl Harbor was coming? But even if he did know, before that, we embargoed the oil. And if you take an island nation like Japan and you chop off their oil supply, that's an act of war. So who started World War II?
Well, true.
And then we were talking about World War I and all the details about the oil and but what were we told in school? That it was the assassination of the Archduke of Ferdinand.
Exactly.
That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
That really had very little to do with it, I think.
Right. So the point is, by all means, students of international affairs, go ahead and look back and see if you can find that, in fact, there was a degree of premeditation. And you know, my book deals out all the elements of the crime that you have to prove. Some people find it preposterous to think that we could try George W. Bush in a Vermont courtroom when he hasn't even set foot in Vermont. You see, and you have to deal with these.
But he's taken the Vermont young people and sent them over to be killed.
Well, there you go. And in fact, there are legal doctrines that that actually justify that approach. One of them is the mere conspiracy to commit murder. If you're a co-conspirator, you don't necessarily have to be at the scene of the crime. What you have to do is set in motion an overt act in the state where you're going to bring the prosecution. And in this case, the overt act is going on television and announcing to the American people that Saddam Hussein is a threat, and therefore we need to send our young people off to war. That's all you have to do. He did that. He got on television. The message reached Vermont. That was one of the overt acts. Another overt act is the recruitment of soldiers by federal recruiting stations. So that's one way that you establish jurisdiction.